Now, let's see the two ways that you can play with keyframes to add an animation. But first of all, let's use move tool and move the square, hold shift and move the square to this position here. Now we want to add an animation for this square to go from this position to this position, to the opposite side. Okay, to add an animation, you go to the rectangle, which is this one here, and then you in the timeline and click this arrow here to open the animation options. You can see now we have transform, which has inside the position and rotation and scale, which we will see in the next lectures. For now, in order to add an animation, you need to add something called keyframe, and we need at least 2 keyframes to add an animation. So in order to add an animation, click the watch icon beside the properties that you need to animate. So this time the transform, I need to animate the transform, so click the watch icon, and here we go, you have a keyframe there, that little diamond there. Okay, then move forward in the timeline for 20 frames right here and add another keyframe. Now whatever the animation that you will do, it will happen between these 2 keyframes. Okay, so let's see the first thing. The first way is to change the animation options for the first keyframe and keep the second keyframe untouched. So now those 2 keyframes had the same properties, the same position, the same scale, the same rotation. So let's change the second keyframe properties. Okay, so move the inductor, hold shift and move the inductor to that point, so it will stuck when it's touch that keyframe, and use move tool and move the blue square to the opposite side. And you can see during that time the square will move. Okay, wonderful. This is your first animation. Okay, fantastic. Now move the inductor to the first keyframe right there, and let's delete those 2 keyframes, and I will show you something to do that. You can use history box, but let's delete them manually. So hold command if you have a Mac, I mean control if you have Windows, or command if you have a Mac, and select both those 2 keyframes, and you can see if you right click and you can see delete, or you can press backspace to delete them. Now you can see we don't have any animation. Now let's do the same animation, but following another way to do it. The second way is to change the position of the square to where you want, to put it where you want, then change the first keyframe. So I know now that I want this square to be here. So go ahead and move it to that position. Okay, and now add 2 keyframes, the same thing. Now this is the last position of the square. I know this square will stop here. Okay, so change the properties of this first keyframe this time. Okay, go there and change it to here again, and you will see we have the same animation, but we sort of did it backward by changing the animation options for the first keyframe and keep the second keyframe untouched. Now you might need this method to do an animation, and you will see during the course that we will use it again and again. But mostly we will use the first one, which is the obvious one, is changing the second keyframe. At the end it will have the same result, so don't get confused. You will see that during the class. So now you know how to animate the position. In the next lecture, we will animate the scale and rotation and the opacity, which is here. So thank you for watching and see you there. Don't delete this square.